Let me have a look at this front door. The leather is very rough here. That's a really odd sort of textured pattern there, like it's got lumps and bumps underneath it. Obviously it's not in a very straight line here either. I'll see if I can get some impression as to how easily this might move, because it might not move easily. This leather is very thin, it's not much thicker than paper. I'm getting under it. Okay. Well, whatever adhesive had been used is not sticking that back particularly well. See if I can get under this face. Of course, it could be a mixture. It could be glued with one substance on one face and one on another, or we might be looking at two different repair jobs here. Yeah, that certainly doesn't look enthusiastic to come off. I don't know what that adhesive was. It's breaking away. Corners like this are always tricky because that's where the leather was pulled very tight. Sometimes the glue has a very, very good grip in an area like that. Yeah, it's stuck right to that corner, okay. Probably the other corners are in a similar state. Oh, the glue's thicker here. if I can get this leather off in one piece, my next task is to scrape the back of the leather to remove the remnants of old adhesive to get it as flat as possible. Okay, that part's not too bad. I'm just stuck the tip of my scalpel through the corner there. That'll just have to disappear that mark later. It's the corners that are going to give me grief. Yeah, there's a nice wodge of glue right in the corners, holding everything quite firmly. Oh yeah, that's loose. Got loose on one corner, loose on two corners. Right. Well, this is the damaged corner. This is where the leather joins. We've got one side here still to go. Because of the angle of this face, I can't attack it from the same angle with my scalpel. I can't slide my blade down underneath it quite so easily. I can only come at it from this side. So as you can see, probably my most serious problem with this camera is not fixing its natural illnesses, but redoing someone's bodged previous repair. There we go, it's off. Okay. So we've got our leather off in one piece, and in here now I can see that there's a very thick build-up of glue here. So the thickness of that glue, whatever it might happen to be, and you can see the big wodges of it in the corners there, it's like a big lump. The thickness of that adhesive also helped to stretch the leather out so that the corners weren't meeting correctly. I have to clean the door. I mean, mostly the glues come straight off that door by and large, so I'll clean the rest of the surface of that and I'll turn my attention to dealing with this leather. So I'll try a couple of solvents and see how I get on. First off, I'm going to try some acetone, see if that makes a dent on that adhesive, and I'm doing that on the door because this is metal and I know that it won't be damaged by any solvent that I put on there really, but it allows me to test the adhesive and find out what moves it before I work on that leather, which is obviously going to be far more delicate. And that appears to be dissolving quite readily in the acetone. I wouldn't normally use acetone on leather. I suspect it might dry the leather out and make it more brittle. However, it might be the stuff. The leather here, when that was new, that was just a flat piece. You can imagine that folded out, it ends up in a big curve with flat facets. It always joined at the corner. There was always a lap joint at the corner, and that's where the leather was skived away to thin it right out so that the overlapped edges weren't obvious. They didn't look any thicker than the main piece of the leather. Right, that's our door. Let's have a look at this. So I'm swabbing this leather down with some acetone, hoping that the adhesive will soften and come off. It's very sticky, so I can tell it's certainly being melted by the acetone. And the leather there just folded on me, so I can tell that the leather is not ridiculously hard. Let's get a bit of paper to work on. It means that the leather is probably potentially fairly supple once I remove all this filth, this glue. And if that's the case, then it'll be easier to get it to mould around the front of the door than it would be at the moment, because at the moment it's quite rigid with this thick layer of glue on the back of the leather. So I'm sort of watching the leather here as I do this, and I'm looking to see the natural grain of the leather coming through at the back here. I can see that I am getting the adhesive off. And here is the overlap on the corner. This will probably come apart as I get into it with the acetone. The original adhesive that would have been used to stick this leather to the front of the camera has the look of shellac, but I can never get it to dissolve in alcohol, so I presume it's not really shellac at all. It's possibly a formaldehyde based adhesive, something like resorcinol. Because that looks much the same. Right, well, you can probably see here that this is supple on this side compared with the other sides here, which are just rigid. They're just like a piece of wood. So I've got to go around the four sides and clean this leather off, and then hopefully glue it all back in place. Won't make you sit through all of that. I have this leather as clean as I can reasonably get it, I think. I've managed to remove the vast majority of that adhesive. There's a few patches, few shiny patches here, and I don't know whether that's more of the same adhesive or some of the original adhesive that I'm seeing in those spots. I'm just about ready to have a go at gluing this back in place. Well, there's a bit of that adhesive there, it's gone, it's quite sticky. It's quite rubbery. I don't know how well this will lay back in place. It looks pretty promising. I'll leave it to dry out for another half an hour and then I'll glue that back in position, I think. In the meantime, I really need to clean up this camera body, and this is mostly going to need Naphtha on a cotton bud. Naphtha is cigarette lighter fluid, the stuff that you would put in your Zippo. And it's usually readily available. So I'm just making sure I clear away any old dirt and grease. In particular, taking great care to get it clean round the coupling gear at the back here. It transfers the action to the back of the shutter. And that gear is a bit clogged up with grit. I'm running a bit of solvent down there. And I'll use a stiff paintbrush to brush out the teeth in that gear. There's quite a bit of grit impacted in there, which of course will make for a rough action of the film advance. I'm just looking now, I can just scrape down between those teeth as I roll this thing across, just to make sure that any impacted lumps of grit or dried grease are gone. That doesn't revolve smoothly. Yet. That's good now. Must have been a particle of grit behind the back of it, causing some friction. That appears to be good. And looking in from the front, see what it looks like. It certainly looks clean, and at the front of the gear there. That looks fine. Use a paintbrush to brush out the body. Shift any loose bits. That's good. And then the back of the body, I'll use the same paintbrush to run down the edges, around the back of the door, and the film cassette chamber in particular, and blow that out and just check the state of this. It looks quite good. That looks fine. The bellows, I'm checking the bellows just to make sure that they are firmly fixed to the body, that there's no sign of them coming away. It would be unusual for a Retina IIa for the bellows to be coming away from the casting. It's something that can happen if the camera has got quite a degree of corrosion to it, and that in those cases it's where corrosion has got down between the glue and the aluminium body and made the glue effectively let go. This certainly looks good in that regard. It doesn't appear to be a problem. Right, a bit more cleaning on this body now. At the top, clean all round in here where the film advance gears sit. And at the base of the camera, where the rewind button and its catch move, that's quite clean. And inside the body, I just need to wipe around here to make sure I get rid of any old grease. That looks pretty good. That body's fine, that'll be just good like that. That's ready to go. Have a quick look at this leather. The overlapped corner is typically this corner down by the hinge line at the bottom. Just seeing how this sits on the door. Be a bit of work getting this corner to close up correctly. I can see that there's actually a section missing there by the looks of it. It's lost a little bit of leather in the corner there. That may have overlapped there at one stage. A bit more work removing the adhesive on that part I think might be in order, to make sure I can get that lap joint to close up and close up fairly invisibly. Right, it's separated there now, that's good. That means I can probably get these pieces to overlap and close up the effective gap. Yeah, this would have been the underside, this would have been the top, and it would have sat over the top there. I can see I'll be left with a gap, but it's exceptionally small. I think that'll go. There's a bit of unusual stiffness here in this corner still. Must be a bit bit of adhesive left soaked in there. You can see now, it's because I've got that corner parted, this is the shape that panel would have been originally. Right, I'll try gluing it back on. Well, the leather's back on and it's a lot less bumpy. I'm going to have to do some disguise work on that corner, but overall the effect is better. I'll put that to one side. Once the adhesive has had a chance to dry properly, I can rub a bit of wax into that and improve it. I'm just going to clean these struts with some naphtha. When I've got them clean, I will straighten them up. It's easier to see what needs attention once I've got all the dirt and grease off here. I know I've got at least one bent strut. That might not be the only damage. So once I've got this clean, I'll be able to assess the situation a bit better. My mechanical parts from the body are all soaking in some solvent at the moment, and then they will go through the ultrasonic cleaner. I typically don't put the struts through the ultrasonic cleaner because the little black paint dots on the buttons will go away if I put this in the ultrasonic cleaner, and then I'd have to paint them back. And since I'm not looking for extra work, I don't want to do that. So it's easier to clean these manually. There's some quite pronounced scuff marks here. Not sure what's caused that. It's at the bottom. Of course that strut's a bit bent, so perhaps that was the cause of that. Alright, well that's clean enough to start with. Let's pop these into the open position and have a look at them. Well, this strut's quite bent. I want my pliers on that. It's bent at about this point, so if I put my pliers in like that, I can probably bend that back. It's a bit more than that. That's better at the end. There's still a bit of a bow in there. That strut is supposed to be straight. The inside strut should be straight. Looking at the one at the bottom, that's nowhere near as bad. That looks quite good. Now if I hold my struts in here so that they're parallel as they would be in the body, I'm looking to see if these pop into place nicely now. And they appear to. They're certainly improved. So part of the problem is sorted out. The outer struts, this one and this one, they should have a slight dish in them. The ends should be bend away from the centre. I'm looking at the struts down here, these rails, to see if they are straight. They look pretty good. I'm willing to believe that they're straight. And this is the shutter release components here. The shutter release in the camera body presses down at this point. That slides down on a rail and it pulls this side down, and this pulls the arm on the shutter itself. That all appears to move quite freely. There's a bit of surface corrosion on here. It's not especially marked, and there's not much I can do about that, short of taking it completely apart, stripping the metal and nickel plating things. There's no danger I'll be removing that surface corrosion. Now, there's a little spot of something there. I'm not sure what that is. It feels like a pit, so it's a corrosion pit of some sort. There might be a scratch or something under that. That shouldn't cause us any problem. I was checking in case it was something stuck to the surface of the material. There I'd be thinking about glue or something along those lines. But it's not. It's actually a pit in the material. Well, those struts look quite good to me. I'd say they'll go back into the body without a fight. Now, our focus scale ring. I can see my video camera blinking at me, letting me know that the battery is tired. So if it suddenly goes offline before I finish doing this focus ring, you'll know the reason why. Here I'm just cleaning away any dried grease and rubbish from the back of it, and I'm looking at the front. In particular, I'm looking for the dents where the 4 screw heads have bitten into it to see if there's any evidence that they've shifted, but there isn't. It all appears to be fine. That's good, and that brings me to the focus mount, which is very, very sticky with dirty dried grease.